actually Californians by birth, though. I was born in LA, James was born in San Diego, so we're with you. We're all together. I'm going to probably start by doing most of the chatting, but my name is Chelsea, and this is my partner James. We're a husband and wife duo, along with being business partners, and we're the founders of Grain on Bainbridge Island. Bainbridge Island is on the ancestral land of the Salish Coast and the Suquamish tribes. I'm going to let that pass first. James and I met at the Rhode Island School of Design, where we studied industrial design, and we founded Grain in 2008. We design and manufacture furniture, lighting, textiles, and objects at our island studio and shop. And just like Wesley said, we're majority women-owned, family-owned, committed to eliminating our carbon footprint, and in 2021 we became a benefit corporation, which I'll talk about a little bit further into the presentation. We start a lot of our presentations with showing a photo of our home, built in 1901 on the island. This house not only was served as our home, but also as the Grain headquarters for the first 7 years of our business. So we worked out of our home and studio shop. We had employees in our living room. We made lunch together. James made the coffees. It was, for a long time, a pretty intimate business. After about a decade on the East Coast, we were feeling nostalgic for the Northwest, where we both grew up, and we wanted to return home to start a creative practice together. Our original vision was to be a sustainable design consultancy, so helping to design products and experiences for other businesses, but we quickly realized how hard it would be for us to sell our concepts as a consultancy, so like to pitch our ideas to other manufacturers, especially out of school and especially in the start of a recession. So we decided to develop a product as an example of what we could do. So we had our schoolwork on our website, and we knew that there was something missing in being able to link that to industry. So we thought, okay, well let's make something as a demonstration of what we can do. So we started by exploring smaller home goods, our first being a recyclable shower curtain. So this was in response to trying to shop for something for our own home that didn't off-gas, so that was PVC free, and that we could recycle at the end of use. And we made these in our shop. We bought a grommeter, and we grommeted these and folded them up. And it's made out of a No. 2 plastic, so you can recycle it with your milk jugs and other things. There was a request for patterns, and we couldn't afford the printing, so we made these DIY kits with a non-toxic marker where you could draw your own patterns. A lot of our photography is shot on the island. We try to incorporate place in everything that we do. Some of you may know our work. This is our totem candle. It was another really early product which we licensed to the Brooklyn-based area where they make design products for the home and gifts and toys and that sort of thing. This is how we originally made the candles in our shop, which was we would buy these beeswax tape or beeswax columns from some folks in Oregon, and we would cut them on our lathe. And for anyone who's worked with the lathe with wood, try wax, because it's like beautiful. It feels like cutting into butter, and it smells fantastic if you're using beeswax. It's a really fun experiment. This is showing our candles in context with some ceramics we made. Today, 80% of our clients are architects and interior designers, and about 20% of our work is custom based on our existing collections. So it's a nice mix of both residential and commercial projects, interiors projects that our work ends up in. This is an example of some client work showing the desk is something we made in our studio. This is an interior in Seattle by Brian Paquette. Our furniture, lighting, rugs, and objects are produced in small batch runs at our studio or through special collaborations with expert artisans. We're known for an elemental aesthetic that honors raw materials that we ethically source here in North America. Since founding our studio, social and environmental responsibility has been at the core of everything we do, and I will will show examples of what that actually means in practice. But as a beneficial corporation and a climate neutral business, we apply this to every aspect of our work, from design to sourcing to employee well-being to customer care to our carbon footprint to how we support environmental and community nonprofits doing critical work. We have a set of values that run through all the work that we do, and I thought it'd be fun to kind of show those values and actual products or projects that relate to those values. So that's how I'm going to go through the rest of the presentation. The first value being essential beauty. So we find a minimal and elemental approach to our design work and use of material. This is in respect to resources. It's also with the intent to provide finished pieces that bring harmony and balance into the built environment. This often translates to materials that are untreated and undyed to respect their natural properties. So an example of this is our stitch mirror collection. Again, shot in the woods at home. We originally developed this design in response to a batch of salvage mirror that we found in a building restore in Seattle. Mirrored glass, as most of you might know, can't be recycled like other glass. So when big sheets come out of commercial spaces, they sometimes become available for reuse. So imagine a mirrored wall coming out of a commercial space, and they would sell it to a restore, and we would try to reuse it. Working with salvage material is very difficult, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about that. But that was one of the ways we thought we could look at environmentalism. So for our first version of this design, we took these huge sheets, these salvage sheets, to a local water jet cutter and had them cut with spaces that we could use to stitch the backings back on. We wanted to add back texture and handwork to help. This design process helped us learn about the complexities of working with salvaged material. This is a detail, and we hand stitch the edging on with him. As many of you may know, materials have memory, and the glass that we were using had essentially been through so much trauma, so much motion by being pulled off the walls and moved around, that adding more cuts into it made it very vulnerable for breakage, which is not something you want when you're developing products for sale. As we started to get some orders in, we realized A, how hard it would be to source used material consistently, and B, that there was way too much breakage in cutting and working with it to be considered a sustainable use. So we eventually found a domestic mirrored glass vendor that we were excited to partner with, and now the backings are made of FSC apple ply, and we hand stitch them on still with hemp thread. Because we make all of our work to order, to avoid inventory overage and waste, we're able to custom size and color these for clients, which has been an added service. And I did bring some material samples that we can look at later, just showing what some of those materials look like in real life. This is an interior by a Seattle designer, Heidi Collier, using one of our mirrors. The next product story I wanted to talk about is our plant-based textile collection. So James and we met during a winter session course called Bridging Cultures Through Design, taught by a RISD alum, Mimi Robinson, who had spent years working with NGOs and other nonprofits, with artists and communities in countries working towards more sustainable development goals, towards the UN standards. Our winter session focused on women's weaving cooperatives in Guatemala and was sponsored by Aid to Artisans and the Guatemalan Trade Commission, which is funded by USAID. This experience was so impactful and built so many friendships that we kept connected with some of the communities and exporters and continued to develop ideas to work together after graduation. So one area that we were specifically interested in was the historic use of natural dyes in Mayan culture. When we began developing weavings for grain, we knew that we wanted to limit our work to communities working with natural dye. So the natural dye process, I don't know if any of you all have worked with textiles, but the natural dye process is kind of like cooking or making a tea. And it's dependent on so many factors, from the time of year the plant is harvested to the moon cycles. There's a lot of spiritual wisdom involved in that, and we had a real challenge educating our clients to the reality of variation between all those dye lots when you're working with something this complex. These are some process shots are some examples of our textile designs that we developed, all using natural dyes. The pink is especially cool because it's avocado skin, which that's the other thing about it. It's not always intuitive, like what plant creates what color, right? You can use the seed, the pit of the avocado to make another color as well. So the weavers that we work with, they set their own pricing and lead times as a co-op, and they're able to work from home and can do this work throughout their day. It's almost all women working in the dye. There's some men who work in the footlooms. So they can work throughout their day, taking care of many of their other family commitments, as well as doing some of this work. In addition, by having income opportunities from craft-based work, it makes it more likely that they will pass these traditions down to family members and essentially keep the skills alive in their communities. If you can't find ways to sell this work in the marketplace, then maybe it's not of interest to learn, right? The second value is attentive care. So we respect the continuous process of developing and refining a craft practice. We bring this care into our relationships with ourselves, employees, collaborators, vendors, and clients. It's our hope to cultivate a community around this practice that's reciprocal and beneficial for all. So an example of this is our cast glass collection, where we work with, it's an artist collaboration basically. In this case, we work with Seattle-based glass artist and a dear friend of ours, John Hogan, who's developed these cast glass components for our furniture and lighting series for us. These are our bump sconces in 2 sizes. And I'm going to show you some process. So cast glass, the glass gets liquefied at high heat, and then it's poured. We use graphite molds to pour the glass in. So it's kind of like a cupcake. You pour in the hot material, and then you let it cool. In this case, you let it cool. You don't heat it up. So that's showing the glass pouring in. This is kind of letting it settle. And whatever you mold the glass into, you can use different materials. You're going to get a different finish. And I brought a sample of some cast glass just to show. What's really interesting is as it cools, it kind of quivers, and you get this like beautiful texture that you can't predict. That's showing it on the tabletop before it moves to the annealer for cooling. And this is a table that also came out of this collaboration. In this case, it's a tabletop, and then we made the base. So James took some glass classes at RISD, which gave us a little foundation, but we'd never be able to bring a hot shop into our studio. So this type of collaboration allows us to continue to explore materials and processes and creates growth opportunities through learning new techniques. This is showing the process for the tabletop, which is we use a different type of mold. We use stainless steel, and we just pour it. It gets poured right onto a tabletop. And again, the stainless steel gives you a different kind of quiver. The next object story I'm going to take you through is our braided rug collection, which is also a type of collaboration, but it's with a production partner, so not an artist or artisan co-op. We learned about this Rhode Island mill during our time at RISD. We made a connection and asked if they'd be up to experimenting on some ideas with us. One thing I wanted to drop in, since you're all students, is that it's sometimes easier to reach out and make those connections when you're a student than when you're a professional with a small business. So if like this type of work is interesting to you, I encourage you to reach out to folks in the Long Beach community, because saying you're a design student sometimes allows you more access than maybe I'm starting my studio, I don't know what I'm doing, that kind of approach. So I encourage that. I think because of the relationship with the mill that the mill has with the RISD community, that they were more open-minded to like try out our weird ideas, which they may not have been if we weren't students or alumni when we approached them, right? So we also love that these rugs are made in the US, and they're based on a simple technique and tradition of braided rug construction. This is a pool rug. So, and I brought some samples to show you, but If you saw this up close, you might recognize the technique. It's a braided technique. Like, my kids go to Montessori school, all the rugs look like this. They're round and they're like multicolored. We were taking kind of their tradition and trying to create new compositions with the same technique. This is an example of a client interior using one of our rugs in Brooklyn. So we've been working with this mill. Oh, so I wanted to say, we felt like we could push the mill's construction constraints to inform new shapes and play with the tradition a bit, and that we could work order by order was also really important. So there are some fabrication shops that won't work with you on one piece, right? So this was a unique opportunity that they would be happy to work with us on one piece per client, instead of in batches where you're investing in a huge amount of inventory, which we still can't do that. We prefer to work this way. And then we can customize things for our clients as orders come in. So we've been working with this mill since 2016, and we still make each rug to order. Our standard, this is showing some of our materials, and I have some on the table as well. Our standard yarn is 100% undyed English wool. We also work, so it's the color in this image is the color that actually comes off the sheep, so no dyeing is happening. We also work with Sunbrella yarn, which is made from 50% recycled content and Oecotex certified. Sunbrella can be used in an outdoor setting. It's also our vegan option. So as of 2020, we now offer vegan options. So everything is available. If you don't want to work with animal products within our products, we can offer options. Here's our duo rug. And this is in an interior in San Francisco, designed by Studio Ahead. And our quilt rug, which was inspired by patchwork quilts and kind of that uneven feeling you can get from the handmade. This was our most complex design using this technique. It's called a walling rug. And it was inspired by stack rocked walls that we saw during a trip to the English countryside. So the next value is well-being. We believe that the best creative work comes from a place of expansive time and space, and we try our best to hold this for ourselves, our employees, and our collaborators. It's our hope that our work provides a sense of well-being and in use as well. We use safe materials and finishes to ensure that they contribute to a healthy environment. We design patterns and forms that we hope spark joy and call to be touched and cared for over time. So a first example of this is our dish table collection. This was our first furniture product. I mean, in the early days of our business, we couldn't afford the tools and the material to make furniture. It took time for us to get that confidence. So these tables were our first real furniture project, and they were inspired by some hand-carved stools that I grew up with that split over time because they were carved out of one piece of wood. And we wanted to make something that still retained the light footprint, but were made in a way that would stand the test of time. So with all of our designs, we think about longevity, how things can be cared for as they age. We hope that they get passed down over generations, but we also think about what might happen at the end of their useful life. For that reason, we try to work with rapidly renewable materials that can be reused, repurposed, or recycled. This is a desk version of that same design. Our standard wood is FSC ash, so Forest Stewardship Council. Ash is a fast-growing domestic hardwood, so it's rapidly renewable. There's some issues with ash we could talk about later if you want to get into it, but that's been our wood for quite a while, our standard wood. The third-party standard ensures that the wood we source is being managed in a way that preserves biodiversity while creating sustainable economic opportunities for timber workers. So we do this because current laws don't do enough to protect wildlife, waterways, old-growth forests, and the people who directly experience the devastating effects of traditional forestry. We've also experimented with forest-free urban and rural salvage, as well as reclaimed wood from architectural projects. A good example of this is our limited edition run of dish side tables made from twice reclaimed Doug fir. So in addition to all this, all of our wood scraps are repurposed for smaller wood products or as heating fuel, and our sawdust is composted. Our standard wood glue I don't know if you all are into glue. We're into glues, so our standard wood glue is vegan, water-based, low VOC, and FDA approved for indirect use with food. This is an interior showing our dish coffee table, Brian Paquette in Seattle. Our standard stain, so all the black that you see, it's made of a plant-based oil and mineral pigment, and it uses a benzene-free solvent. The mineral pigments are non-toxic, and they don't include any heavy metals. Our standard hard wax oil finish is made from plant-based oils, including sunflower, thistle, and soy, as well as wax with a benzene-free solvent. And our finishes pass food-grade use safety as well as commercial level durability. So you can lick it, it's fine, you're gonna be okay. Like there are a lot of things that you bring in your home you should not be like putting your face on. And these you can, and it's really important to us, and it's important to a lot of our clients. We see our work gets specified in a lot of spaces for people with chemical sensitivities, which there are a lot more of those folks these days, and spaces for kids where you really want the safest materials you can. It leaves you with a product that can be safely used in anyone's home, but it also makes for better working conditions for us and our team as well. Like, we don't want to be working with materials every day over a lifetime of your career that could be unsafe for your health. Here's an interior showing one of our tables. This is Jamie Bush, California. Next I'm going to talk about cork, which is really exciting, and if you all don't know anything about cork, I'd love to tell you more. Cork is a new-ish, this one more photo of our dish table in an interior in San Francisco, Lauren Weiss. So the cork collections. Cork is a newish material for our studio. We started researching it in 2019. Shown here is our first piece. It's a drinks table from our arch collection. So cork is considered a rapidly renewable material. The cork oak tree requires no chemical inputs to grow, and when cork is harvested from the lower part of a tree, it's done so without damaging the health of the tree, which can live up to 200 years. So this is showing essentially the bark gets stripped from the tree, and the tree is unharmed from this process. Cork bark regenerates itself naturally, and in doing so it absorbs carbon, so it's continually absorbing carbon as the new bark is grown. So all of our cork is sustainably grown by a third-generation family-owned business in Portugal. Cork grows in Mediterranean climate, so it would be totally appropriate to grow in California. Our cork is actually a composite made from scrap materials from the cork bottle stopper process. So the primary cork, they punch out the bottle stoppers first, the wine corks, and then they have all the scrap material that they chip up, and then they bind it together. It's bound with polyurethane, which is chemically inert once it's cured, and it's totally compostable at the end. It's like so exciting to me, this material. Even with the shipment, so ours comes from Portugal, and even with the shipment from Portugal to our studio, it's still a carbon sink. This is showing our donut table. Cork is made in blocks, or these huge spools, and the material, it is expensive, so our brief to ourselves is to make components from the spools and blocks that create as little waste as possible. So how can we use these components? This particular table, we cut from the spool, so the spool is, this high, and this one, and we can slice 3 sections out of it, so we can get 3 of these tables out of that section, and it already has a hole through the center, and we shaped the hole to make it more interesting, but this is just how that material is actually produced. And traditionally, these spools were made so that you can cut off like veneers from the outside of the circle, but we use it as a full table. This is a bench. So cork, the pieces that we make, they're all unfinished, and they have like a really soft hand. Again, I have some materials you can touch up here at the end. And what I think is so amazing is that the whole thing, because the whole piece of furniture is made out of one material, it's biodegradable at the end of life, which is something, we're always trying to think about that end of life. It's in our current home. So this is our second cork collection, our clover collection. And in this collection, we explored this dark brown cork. So the dark brown cork is actually toasted. It's a way for our cork supplier to use more of their waste cork. So cork from like the exterior of a tree, or a tree that's been through fire, that's discolored. It doesn't have that like natural almondy color anymore. And so that some of that material is going to waste. And so they came up with this technique. We didn't develop this technique. The supplier developed this technique, but they toast all of those scraps. And it's toasted all the way through, so when it's made up into the blocks, you can cut through it and you still have that solid color. It still smells a little like toast, but that kind of goes away after time. It's a beautiful, beautiful chocolate color, and we're eliminating more from the waste stream using it. This is the whole collection. We did a little bit of this checkerboarding using the two corks together. So we think of cork as this amazingly futuristic biomaterial, in that if you take just a little, not too much, the cork forest is able to remain alive and undisturbed, and the ecosystem that surrounds the trees thrives. In our partner's farm in Portugal, this includes, they've documented 135 different plants and 200 different animal species that grow in this cork forest, and they're completely undisturbed by harvesting the cork. Cork forests cover about 20% of Portugal, and I think this is really important to note because it's such a beautiful way to think of a relationship with material than we do think of with traditional forestry, where we just go in and clear cut everything and just disrupt the entire ecosystem for generations, right? So I like to put our work in a little bit of context and show you like where it lands. So you make these things and where do they end up? So like I said earlier, 80% of our work is for architects and interior designers for residential and commercial interior spaces. And here are some examples of that. Thing. This is an interior in Seattle. So we love working with architects and interior designers because they are so knowledgeable, and if the relationship is successful, it often leads to years of collaboration. We're getting ideas from them when they're specifying things, when they're asking for custom, it's like sparking an idea of how we could come up with a better solution, or maybe a new category from their interests and what they're actually seeing as a need in their clients' homes. So this is our dish side table on this project. We're also seeing like how our products, our work lives in harmony with other things. Another dish side table. Our dish side table is probably our best-selling product. This one is in Doug Fir. This is in a loft in Soho, New York. This is actually someone's personal space in a huge yacht. This is their living room. And it's our duo rug. This is an interior in a Schindler building here in LA. Dish table again. This is a Lake Tahoe residence, our dish tables, Jamie Bush. This is a commercial space, so we also, our work ends up in offices, and this is a healthcare space in New York. Hospitality, hotels, those can be really great projects for a small business like us. This is actually a pool house and champagne cave in Portland, Oregon. An interior in San Francisco. And I want to talk a little bit about our studio as well, because it's a little bit unique. So it's kind of a little tour. We try to integrate appropriate technology into the work that we do. We've always kind of thought about that from the beginning, like handwork and technology, like how can those things work together? It comes from our own personal curiosities. Maybe James has a little more interest in the technology than I do, but that idea of, maybe it's appropriate sometimes to wrap something by hand, and maybe it's appropriate to use a tool. And we kind of want to respect materials, and we want to respect our time, and we want to think about how we're making things, and that it can include both. So we're not purists in any way. So in 2019, after many years of research and discussions, we decided that we needed to update our shop and invest in some new equipment. So we were entering our 40s with 2 young children and coming to grips with the physicality of the work that we do, like being woodworkers and making products in our studio, packing boxes and crates, and it's a physical We knew that if we wanted to continue this practice, we needed to set ourselves and our employees up for better longevity. So James spent a lot of time researching and talking to experts, and we created a wish list for our Grain 2.0 shop. We actually found this robotic arm. I know you all have a little arm too, we saw it in your studio. We got this for sale secondhand from Boeing. They had purchased it for a project and then they didn't end up needing it. And so we got a good deal. And it became, a really good solution for our needs. We were thinking about getting a CNC. And now this kind of serves as a 4-in-1 tool for us, a wood mill, a metal mill, a rotary, and a lathe. And what we're most excited about is that, I saw your arm back there was doing drawings. Like, we haven't even started to explore the other things that it can do. So we're excited about building a relationship with this tool in a different way than when we were working with an outside vendor for our CNC. When you're paying for time on a tool, you want to make sure it's like perfectly correct. There's less room for, error, or you have to go with what you end up with because you just invested in it. Where in this case, we have, theoretically, a little more wiggle room in exploring different ways of working. We're also, we do a lot of low-tech precision woodworking as well in the studio. It's all tools and equipment that you would recognize from your own shop here. Racking, we got racking when we moved to the new space, which was a big deal for us, in a forklift, so we could move our materials. Again, thinking about the physicality, how to unload and get things in and out. And it was really important for us and it has been really super helpful. Things you don't think about when you're starting a business. Okay, so this is an example of our newest work, our off-grid collection, which we made for a show in New York last spring. This is our first piece of case goods, so cabinetry, and we cut all of the parts using our robotic arm. For this piece, we were inspired by a checkerboard pattern, a pivot hinge from a 19th century door in the Barnes Foundation in Philadelphia. So this is a photograph of a book that we have, and the piece is called Door for an Inner Room. And so we were using the back of this door, which was, the front is what this piece is actually famous for because of the beautiful carving, but we were using the pattern from the back as a point of inspiration, as well as how that hinge functions. So check patterns, they originate as far back as 10,000 BC as a byproduct of the textile weaving process. And when making this piece, we wanted to ensure that our interpretation held space for all the history and references the image brings up, while still creating a functional piece of furniture for a contemporary interior. We're currently working on some new pieces to build out a collection around what we've explored with this credenza. So this is a bar cabinet that's going to be launching when our gallery has their opening in a few weeks in New York. And this one's made out of walnut, same pivot hinge, but you can imagine a whole series of different pieces using the same kind of form language. It's also been really important for us to cultivate a community around our work. So we do this through participating in group shows, or when asked to do work with design students as guest critics or speakers. We think it's really vital to be generous with what you know. So to come back after you started your careers and share what you know with your community here. This image shows our bee eaters, mason bee shelters, which we recently designed for a group show that we were asked to create. The show brief was to create a public installation that provokes the act of sharing. So we were one of 37 designers from 12 countries, and all of the designs for the work are available open source for anyone to make themselves for their own communities. So I don't know if you know about mason bees, but they're different than honeybees. They live solitary. They're solitary flyers and they live by themselves. And they need a place to live, and because there's so much habitat destruction globally, they have less places to live. So creating a little home for your local bees is a great way to promote pollination. Future, this is just an image of one of our vision boards. We're spending a lot of time this spring thinking about the future of our business. We've been at this for 15 years. And as folks who've been deeply concerned about social and environmental issues, specifically the climate crisis since we started, it's easy to get really overwhelmed. We're also parents, and it's really easy to get overwhelmed. As value aligned as this work is, we are continually questioning, like, is this the work we should be doing? Are there other ways we can apply our skills? We speak to a lot of young designers. We have interns in our studio, and we hear this sentiment echoed a lot. There are a lot of concerns about this time that we're living in, and how, as design thinkers, we can approach it as providing solutions, or at least asking questions. Achieving our carbon neutral status and our B Corp certification is part of holding ourselves accountable. So it's part of like asking what are best practices that we can look at and follow. How are we making sure the things that we say are actually verifiable in some way, especially when you look out onto a landscape and you hear the same kind of language everywhere about sustainability. It's hard to know like what's real, what's true, at least for me. So this kind of like putting our business through this rigorous assessment was a way even for us just to be like, are we actually doing what we say we're doing? I don't know. Like, what are the best practices? What is a way to measure over time? What is a way to track your improvements over time? What is a way to see progress? What is a way to learn best practices? So this was a way for us to do that. And if any of you all are interested in that, looking at the B Corp website, you can go through and do an assessment or look at the questions that are asked to kind of understand like how some of these things in a business that you might not have thought of, like how you're banking, can apply to your sustainability and your footprint as a business. For us, the thing that seems to bring the most comfort is being in the present moment and in our community. So getting to know our neighbors, and by doing events like this. So when I talk about community, I'm talking about the little island that we live on, but I'm also talking about the greater design community, and especially the academic design community. As we think about our continuing studio practice over the next 15 years, we're thinking more and more about how we might better serve locally. We do not have the answer to that at all, but we're continuing to have open studios, and being here now is all part of that effort to continue to connect and learn more. We want to invite anyone who ever comes out to Bainbridge Island. We're 35 minutes by ferry from Seattle who wants to visit our studio space. We love showing people our shop, and our contact information is there if you ever want to reach out about anything now or in the future. Thank you all for listening to all of that, and we're happy to answer any questions or talk about our materials. Yeah, thanks.